a very warm welcome to our panelists, Miral, Danish, Ali, and Talha. And thank you all in the audience for being here. And hope you'll enjoy this conversation today. So what should you expect from today's conversation? There's a lot of energy and momentum in the EV space right now. A lot of startups, especially local startups, they're iterating to find product market fit. A lot of global players are also eyeing this market. One of the representatives is here today. And there's a lot of acknowledgement from the consumers that, EVs can be cost advantageous if you put enough miles on the wheels. So today we'll hear from the people building on the ground and about really what consumers are actually responding to, what is working, what is not, how much of this market is true demand, and how much of the product is still being pushed. We'll also dig into the role of ride-hailing platforms in the EV shift, and I also want to unpack what sustainability means in a market where, for the most part, many of the consumers still don't care about emissions yet. So let's get into it. So my first question is for Danish. Do you believe that Pakistan is ready for a large-scale EV transition, given that the market is price-sensitive and there's this growing perception that EVs are out of reach or unaffordable to many people? And how do you really see the long-term demand evolving?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for having me here. And thank you for that question, Naveen. I think I'd like to unpack it in a couple of ways. So certainly our experience coming into the market and launching about 3-4 months ago has been very, very positive. I think one of the misconceptions that were there before we had really entered in the market in Pakistan, especially when we talk about electric vehicles, was that electric vehicles means luxury cars or expensive vehicles. Because it just happened to be that, when the market started opening up, we had certain luxury brands that introduced electric vehicle models, and that kind of standardized for the people. I think when you talk about demand and you talk about total cost of ownership, I'll just give you an example that, how we compare and how we are providing value for money for customers, and how people's, decision making is impacted. So, for example, one of the SUVs that we offer is Atto 3. It's a 9 million PKR car, and it provides about 410 kilometers of range on a full charge. Wow. Right? So what that means is that if I were to charge that car at home, I'm going to spend, let's say $60 a unit. So it's a 50 kilowatt hour battery. So I'm spending 3,000 rupees to get 400 kilometers. Right now, if I compare that to any ICE vehicle, you're going to get an average of about 10 kilometers per liter. Yeah. And right now, that would mean you're spending about 10,000 rupees just to get the same kind of mileage. Yeah. So you're talking about reducing your costs, your operational costs, your fuel costs from 1/4 to 1/3. And it just doesn't end over there. Certainly, electric vehicles, they're much more efficient. And they require less maintenance. So your maintenance cost goes down, your cost of operation goes down. When you're looking at a 9 million rupee vehicle, right now in the market, SUVs range is in that price bracket, right? So I certainly am very hopeful of the demand certainly picking up, and just, putting those numbers out there, I think that's the proof in the pudding.
Yeah. No, so glad you brought the operating cost advantages up so that people can, sort of hear it and acknowledge it. So my next question is for Miral. I want to see how you're sizing up the market and sizing up the consumers, really. So compared to traditional transport options like taxis and rickshaws, ride-hailing platforms, they offer more convenience, more transparency. But how much of this, because Pakistan is, again, a very price-sensitive market, right? So how do these advantages actually influence consumer choice? Are they chasing the cheapest ride, or it's more like people are willing to pay for the tech as well?
Thank you, Naveen. So I think when we talk about Pakistan, Pakistan is definitely a very price-sensitive market. and the fact that we as an economy are struggling with the disposable income at every level of the social strata. The idea that Yango is working with is to minimize the share of disposable income that we are grabbing out by cost, right? So the idea is that transportation is a necessity, and that's the very fact, right? Even to get like the basic necessity, which is food, you have to travel, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is to make it as affordable and as easy for people to commute from one place to the other.
Yeah.
And that's the philosophy that Yango is working with. But price sensitivity is definitely one that generates trial, but that's not the one that ensures stickiness of the customers or repeat customers. As per our internal analysis and data, we've realized and we've come up with numbers. So 65% of our repeated customers are actually not staying put because of low prices. They're actually staying put because of the customer experience that they get, which includes reliability, availability, convenience, and the tech stack that we have, which includes a lot of safety features that ensure that people who are traveling are not just traveling at lowest cost, but are also traveling with all of the other features and important aspects that are not negotiable when it comes to commute and traveling. So in that sense, I'd say that it is definitely one that generates trial, but definitely not the one that
That makes
keeps the
people
customer
stay.
with you. Yeah. So we have to, and we are continuously working on that. Yango is a tech company, and the idea is to optimize and make the most of our tech capability, which is in-house, to introduce more and more features so that people get the same value, in fact, better value, but at the lowest minimum cost. And by doing it in-house, we are able to pass on that benefit to the customers in terms of lower pricing. So that's the idea that we're doing. And when we talk about EV, the idea is again to optimize cost, right? So with electrifying, you reduce the cost of fuel and all of that, and we'll talk more about that also. But from a customer standpoint, the idea is to put as much optimization into the costs and cost headers so that the maximum benefit is passed on to the customers.
That's brilliant. So I think Ali can add more layers to this conversation, really. Easy Bike was an early entrant in the market, and you've experimented with quite a few things like, built-up bikes, battery swapping, retrofits, ride sharing. So what did each shift teach you about the market, and what's your thesis about what the Pakistani consumer really is looking from electric transport?
I can answer the second part of your question first. I think consumers in Pakistan are looking for, number one, an asset that is reliable, an asset that they can afford, and an asset that can deliver savings. I think those are the three main considerations when it comes to EV, whether it's a four-wheeler or two-wheeler, but particularly in the two- and three-wheeler category. Just as I mentioned, we started off as a bike sharing service. It's been a long journey, and I think it's mostly been by design. And there's been different learnings that have happened along the way. So when we first started, I didn't know the first thing about EV, or I don't have an engineering background, unlike these guys here. So as a result, through that experiment, we learned number one, learned how to build these things, how to reverse engineer them, how to change them to cater to the Pakistani road infrastructure. And more importantly, I think we learned a lot about consumer behavior. In assets को पाकिस्तान में use किस तरह किया जाएगा. And as we move forward, I believe as a company, it is within our DNA to have a very clear bias to not just action, but we want to be an agile company. So given how Pakistan evolves so fast, we realized, particularly over the last couple of years, that the average Pakistani was struggling to afford an average electric motorcycle just because उनकी price range से बहुत ज़्यादा बाहर हो गया था. So given that we wanted to get these on the road and get people to experience them so that they could experience the savings and then perhaps take a leap of faith in making bigger investments. So what we decided was the need of the hour at that point was perhaps you take the assets that already exist on the road. So जो 70cc motorcycles road pe chal rahi hoti hain, perhaps we can go ahead and convert those to electric and further reduce the cost of ownership. So initial cost of ownership we reduced by 75%. So
Oh, wow.
we did that, and as a result, a lot of people were able to convert their existing bikes that had confidence on to electric, paying maybe 65,000 rupees, and then they can immediately start recovering that money. And most of those guys have already recovered all their money within the first 6 months. And then going forward, we obviously want them to buy newer assets. So I think like most people within the EV space that are manufacturers, like Tala here and some other companies, this is a journey where it has a massive learning experience for all of us. And so I can't say at this point we've really cracked the market, but we're pretty confident we have an understanding, but I think this is something that's going to continue to evolve over the next few years.
So that's actually very well articulated. I'd like to hear from Talha. I'm just curious, do you find yourself selling the idea of EVs more than the actual product itself? How much customer education do you still have to do?
I think our timing couldn't have been better. We started this company back in 2020. Back then, we didn't know that 2025 would be the year of EVs and 2026 would be even better. So there's basic level of EV education that's already been done. Thank you to the Chinese assemblers who brought a lot of EVs to Pakistan. But obviously, people don't realize that all battery types are the same. What is more durable and what is not? Why do they need certain specs? And which EV particularly would be more durable. So these are a few particular things that we still need to educate the customers about, and why we're priced higher, and why do you need this particular product to have a more durable experience. But other than that, people come to us with the mindset that they want to buy an EV. So I think Pakistan, as a consumer, as how consumers are evolving, they're willing to adapt to EVs.
Okay, so I want to probe a little bit deeper. So who are your customers today and why are they buying? Do you feel that there's organic demand that's catching up because you've recently launched? So I'm sure you're getting a fair sense of it. Or do you still find yourself pushing the product?
Yeah, so EV is still a high risk purchase, even if it's for cars, because people don't know if the claimed life would actually be there. So we believe that first set of buyers would be early adopters, people who tend to adapt new technologies, and then there'll be a tipping point where masses will adopt. The good thing is that we're near that tipping point because charging infrastructure is also coming here, and a lot of EV brands are coming into the country, both four-wheelers and two-wheelers. So obviously the market right now is nascent, but that tipping point is near. So what I'm trying to say is there's some pull and there's some push. We're somewhere in between. I personally think that is good for the economy right now as well, because obviously every socio-economic and environment is different, and Pakistan is different to India, and Pakistan is different to China. So we can't really replicate what worked in Taiwan and what worked in China.
Yeah.
Pakistan will adapt to it differently. So in these formative years, we'll see how the market grows and what is the consumer demand and what is the right product for them. And then we'll find a sweet spot. So I personally think that the growth is okay. It's good.
So that's a very nice mix of realism and optimism that I see when I'm listening to that. I want to pressure test that with Miral. So what's the current thinking on electrifying Yango's fleet? Do you think it can be a sound business move, or at this point it's just going to be a PR play?
I think I can talk about Yango at least. For Yango, it's not a PR move because, as I said, we are trying to. So there are two sides of the customers that we have. One is the ride-hailers, the customers, and then is the driver side of the community, right?
Yeah.
And what we are essentially trying to do is to maximize value for both, right? And when we talk about driver earnings, it is absolutely essential. So there is a social aspect and then there is an economic aspect. And I'll come to the social aspect, which is much more apparent later. But when you talk about the economic aspect, it is absolutely essential for us to make sure that we are ensuring the highest earnings for the drivers. And one of the ways we can do that is to bring down their operational cost, right? We know we've run pilots with multiple different technologies, multiple local and international companies in Pakistan. And the idea is, the findings that we have so far is that the operational cost goes down by a whopping 35%, right? Okay. Which means that 35% can easily be added to the earnings of the driver, right? So from an economic perspective, of course, it is super essential for us. But as Talha mentioned, it is something that's super new. It has its risks. Cars, vehicles that we have in Pakistan are generally also an investment medium. So there's a lot that we have to still crack. And on the social side, of course, it's super essential. Like, we know how Lahore is. We know how, the environmental situation it is in different cities, not just Lahore alone. So as a responsible corporate or a company, it is absolutely important for us to make headways to bring down that, the risk that is there for everyone. And we, as Yango, are not just working to work on the tail end of the value chain, which is, ensuring earnings, but we are sort of lobbying with all of the stakeholders that come, in this value chain, which includes manufacturers, which includes financiers, which includes investors at the end who actually take the vehicles, drivers, and even the government for that matter. So there's a lot of work that we are doing with the Punjab government, with the Sindh government, to rally them. In fact, they're also they're taking the initiative themselves. But the idea is to work on building the right kind of fundamentals, the right kind of regulatory framework, so that, generally the ecosystem is a healthy one, a solid one ground up, and that can benefit, every stakeholder can benefit from it, and we can, make it a scalable option in the market. So I feel that it's super important, and we're doing our bit to, contribute towards it.
You've made some really great points here, and I'm really glad to hear all the work that you're doing, especially on the policy and the government public sector side of things. I'm going to circle back to Ali. Based on what you've learned about product market fit, about what you know about the consumers now, what would you do differently in terms of strategy or offering or target customers or whatever if you were starting today, and what would you not do again?
I'm sure we do a lot of things differently on a micro level.
Okay.
On a macro level, I don't think I'd do anything differently.
Oh, wow.
I think this has been a journey we've obviously learned a lot, and it's been a lot of fun. And we've made a lot of mistakes, but we are where we are. We're one of the pioneer leaders in this space, at least in our category. We're there because of the mistakes we've made. So on a macro level, I don't think I would change anything. On a micro level, of course, there's just decisions we would not want to have made. That's my short answer.
Okay. So, well, as long as you're making mistakes and learning from them, that's an iteration, right? So that's part of developing a proper, robust business model. You try out different things and you see what works, what doesn't.
We're real manufacturers. We're not kit assemblers. So there's a certain level of R&D that goes into whatever we do.
Yeah.
And when you do R&D, there's mistakes that are made, and you learn from those mistakes and you build better products. If we were kit assemblers, it would be a different story, but we're not.
So my next question is for Talha. Do you feel that the two-wheeler space is getting crowded on the supply side at least? Because there are legit players like, Easy Bike and yourself, and then there are opportunistic entrants who are chasing short-term profits. And the problem with that is that they can eventually ruin consumer trust. So how do you stay ahead of them?
Yeah, these days, every morning, there's a new pedal coat and a new EV player in the market. So we're very well aware of them. And obviously, right now, doing assembly is you can get motorcycle for $300 from China and sell it for $900 here. So that's a very easy business. But obviously, our forte is design and engineering. We stand for that, and we believe that we'll make the right decisions, which will have the right product market fit for Pakistan. And eventually, the things which are the right product for this environment, they'll sustain and they'll be durable enough. So right now, it's tough because we have to obviously shout for our differentiation. But at the same time, we believe people also realize that what is the product differentiation and why would this particular thing would work in a country like Pakistan. We have seen a similar trend in India as well, because a lot of Chinese products were landed there, but eventually their own local OEMs were successful. So we get inspiration from them, and we are trying to follow the same route. So a few years, I would say, from now on would be a little tough competing, especially on the pricing point, because good product comes at a good price, and as you all have mentioned, that Pakistan is a price-sensitive country, and this is something we also have learned when we went to market. So a few next year would be difficult, especially making the product unit economic positive, especially when you have done the R&D yourself. But we're very hopeful, given the momentum that we have, that, inshallah, hopefully within the next few years, the landscape would change.
So thank you for keeping it real. I want to talk about BYD's entry into Pakistan. So Danish, in your interactions with stakeholders, what did you find as the biggest misconception policyholders or the government or the investors have about the EV value chain? Was there anything in their understanding of infrastructure or the cost or adoption rates or something that was surprising or unusual for you?
So I won't say that there's a misconception when we talk about policymakers from that perspective. I think it's a learning curve. I'll give you an example, specific example of the existing auto policy that's in place. While the auto policy was designed 5 years ago, 4 years ago, to be able to attract investments into electric vehicles, what it fell short of doing was understanding the requirements of the users. So for example, when you talk about electric vehicle adoption, especially for four-wheelers, there's always a question around range anxiety.
Absolutely.
So how do you take care of range anxiety? You have bigger batteries in cars so that you get bigger range. One of the policies that was introduced in the current policy is that the sales tax on electric vehicles with battery sizes of more than 50 kilowatt hours is 18%. And then there's an additional sales tax of 3%. And what they had done was that for electric vehicles with battery capacity of less than 50 kilowatt hours, the sales tax was 12.5%. So while it makes sense that there is an approach towards making it affordable, but you also missed the boat on one of the most, biggest challenges that you face when you talk about electric vehicle adoption, and that's range anxiety. So I think while the government needs to be commended for having the vision to come up with a policy that attracts, local assembly of electric vehicles in Pakistan, but there are certain nuances that still, have to be understood better.
I understand what you're saying. I think that makes sense. And what about you, Miral? What do you think would need to happen in the next 18 months to 24 months for you to say, okay, now EVs are making absolute sense for ride-hailing at scale. We're all in.
I think we've all sort of spoken about it in one sense or the other. It is a chicken and egg problem, to be very honest. And I feel that with a lot of interaction that I'm having with different stakeholders in the industry, everyone is making sure to sort of put their contribution into building that ecosystem. So for instance, you go on scale and have cars, but you don't have enough charging stations. That's a problem. You go on scale and buy all of those EV bikes, rickshaws, or cars in that sense, and they're not good enough for the taxi model. So it's a lot of work that is needed to be done together in parallel on a lot of levels. From a Yango standpoint, I think what I foresee at least by 2026 is that 20 to 25% of the fleet that we have, and Yango works through a partner model, would have been shifted to EV. And when I say that, I come with a lot of confidence and facts, because we're working on not just the four-wheelers, but we're also working to electrify the two and three-wheelers, which is basically where the most chunk of pollution and the most affordability is at, right? Because a four-wheeler is somewhere above 4 million, and you talk about EV rickshaws, and that's a much more affordable, option and a much doable conversation. So from our side, I think it's super important to sort of build those opportunities to build that ecosystem, and not just from an infrastructure standpoint, but also from a regulatory standpoint. And I think with the government push that we see from the federal level, from the provincial level, I think we're headed in the right direction. We have that support, which is, as Danish mentioned, that is one of the basic problems that we've had with the pricing, taxation, and that has a direct impact on the taxi business. We see that things are becoming much more, it's a more conducive environment. And soon enough, we'll have not just on a public level, but also on a private level, you see a lot of women riding, EV scooters, and that's the most amazing thing that I've seen. So I think we are headed in the right direction. From a Yango standpoint, the short answer for that or a summary would be that in another 18 months or so, we see like a 20-25% shift of our conventional fleet onto EVs. And I'm super excited to see that happening.
Okay, so that's amazing, and I'm so glad to hear that. So, Ali, a very quick question for you because we are running out of time, I believe. Banks are very cautious around EVs, around this sector generally. So, what do you think will it take to unlock financing, both at the startup level as well as the consumer level?
I think that's a very valid point, and I think banks will continue to struggle particularly with the bike market and with Mirage riders, for example. Simply because banks don't have capability to underwrite that kind of risk. They've never done it before, and they don't seem like they want to do it anytime soon. They would much rather lend to the government of Pakistan. So I think that change is already it's been driven by NBIs rather. So I wouldn't say there is an absence of financing. There is. There are companies that have done it successfully, and Easy Bike, for example, is working with some of them. So I think it will happen on either the microfinance level or on the NBI level. And as far as startup funding is concerned, I mean, hey, your guess is as good as mine. It's just going to be a struggle in Pakistan, I think, this next couple of years.
Okay. So my final question is for Danish. We know that EVs reduce tailpipe emissions, but at the same time, there are environmental costs associated with battery production, disposal, etc. So how does BYD define sustainability, especially in a country where recycling systems are weak and electricity generation is still mostly fossil fuel based? So what does responsible growth look like for you?
Sure, I think that's a very pertinent question, and certainly sustainability is at the heart of what BYD is aiming to achieve. I think a couple of things that I will talk about over here is that when we talk about BYD as a company, it is a vertically integrated company where BYD is also one of the largest battery manufacturers. So when we talk about the challenges that may come down the line from battery disposal, I think there are already very innovative ideas that are being put to use. For example, when we talk about electric vehicle batteries, there's a concept of repurposing the battery.
Yeah.
So for battery energy solution systems like BESS, which are complemented by renewable energy sources and where battery provides some backup power, I think there's a definitely a use case of repurposing these batteries for those applications. And I think it just doesn't end over there. At the heart of all of this is research and development, and continuously coming up with technology that provides the most sustainable solution out there. So for example, right now the batteries that the electric vehicles have, they have about 3,000 life cycles. So that means you can run the car for 1.2 million kilometers before the battery goes down to an 80% efficiency level.
Yeah.
So I think that's at the crux of it.
So thank you for that. So based on what we've heard today, it's clear that the companies that succeed in Pakistan won't just be the ones with the best tech, but also the ones who understand the consumers and the market, and they're willing to shape it, not just serve it. So a big thank you to our panelists for keeping the conversation honest and grounded. And thank you all for your time and attention. Have a nice evening.